the premise of this evening would have been, had Escape the City not been going off to America, that all of the people involved in that enterprise, where people come together, where jobs are offered to people who are stultified by their city existences, and given original challenges, they would all come together and meet here. Sadly, Escape the City are going off to break America, and the man responsible for this revolution is our first speaker. He sits next to me in our free office space, and I think it says in the programme that he has a fluorescent yellow bus.
Orange.
Orange, sorry. Sacrilege. And what he probably didn't tell you is that he collected £10 once a week for a whole year. How long was it?
6 of us.
6 of them for a year, and then they could buy a bus. So I think that's enough introduction. And pleased to introduce you, Rob from Escape the City.
Thanks very much. Hi, I'm Rob, as Tom just explained. We run our Escape Wednesdays here once a month, and usually I get to do Tom's job, which is a lot easier than I think standing up and doing this one. So now I understand what it feels like to be chucked in and told to talk about something to do with yourself. It's really nice to be here, and thank you all for coming. 15 minutes isn't very long, and I was thinking, well, what should I share in this time, given the theme is entrepreneurial? I guess a lot of the people in the room have either started something or are thinking of starting something. What would I, in my previous incarnation as a management consultant sitting in the audience, wanted to hear from me? What I want to share with you, the title of this talk is 5 made-up rules for starting a business with very little money and very little relevant experience. Because that's what we did. And why I say made-up rules is because I saw a quote I quite liked on Al Humphrey's website the other day. Al cycled around the world on his student loans instead of getting a real job. And he said, rules are for the obedience of fools and the guidance of wise men. So make of my 5 rules what you will, but here we go. OK, so one of the best things about doing what we do, and for those of you who don't know what we do, I'll explain it in just a sec, but one of the best things about doing what we do, which is helping people escape their city jobs in one way or another, or that's what we're trying to do, is we get fantastic emails from people saying, I met my business partner on your site, and I used to be an accountant, and I hated my life, and now I run a travel business based out of Africa. Thank you. Which is really, really rewarding, and kind of sounds quite worthy. But take it back 2 years to when we started this thing, and our motivations were anything but altruistic. They were very selfish altogether. We were the people we were trying to help, and we hated our jobs. And we're pretty miserable. So it was very selfish motives that led us to quit our jobs. But as a result of doing what we're doing, we get really nice emails from people saying, I was sitting on the tube on the way back from Canary Wharf, and I opened the Evening Standard, and I read about your business, and I was filled with hope about the fact that there are other people out there like me. But so the first rule, which we've realized in terms of getting to where we are, which is 2 years down the line, is solve a problem. We wanted to solve a problem for ourselves, which is we hate our jobs, but what are our alternatives? Where are the viable alternatives to do something different? We couldn't find anything helpful enough to make that leap, so we thought, hang on, here's an opportunity. And kind of, you hear a lot of people talking about business ideas and, well, how do I come up with an idea? I think the best bit of advice I've ever heard, and our personal experiences, figure out what you could want in your own life and work out if there are not people out there who share your problem. And in our case, the fact that 40,000 people signed up to Escape the City means, I guess, people share the way we felt. You hear other bits of advice, stuff like any new business should make something easier, should make something cheaper, or should make something more fun for someone. And another one is, if you're going to start a business, you should, this is the ex-management consultant in me speaking, Venn diagram, something that you're good at, something that you enjoy, and something that people are prepared to pay you money for. And right in the middle is probably where you should start something. First time you heard that one, Tom. So in other words, scratch your own itch. So our story, 2 years ago, we were management consultants. We'd done a couple of years in the city. Dom did more than me, paid more of his dues. And we thought, we looked at our managers' jobs, we looked at our directors' jobs and the partners' jobs and thought, you know what, we don't want to be here 5, 10, 15 years. It's not that, it's probably a different talk actually, talking about a good old rant about our jobs, but we figured it wasn't for us. So with very little money and very little experience of building anything online, we quit our jobs and started a blog around this idea that there's more to life than doing work that doesn't matter to you in a big corporation. It's not about knocking the city, because actually we wouldn't have been able to do what we're doing now had we not been there. And a lot of people are very fulfilled in their jobs there, and they get paid massive salaries to do so, so lucky them. So on a wing and a prayer, like Tom just said, we started Escape the City, the premise being to build a community of people who want to do something different, be that find an exciting job in a non-corporate environment, start their own business, or go on a big adventure. And that's the kind of the three things that our concept is based around. We help people by sharing information, connecting them with other people who feel the same, and by providing tangible opportunities on our website. And the question we always get asked is, how do you make money? And currently we make money because we have a jobs board of employees who want to attract talented corporate people like some of you in the room to go and work for them. So where are we today? We're 2 years down the line. We have 40,000 people signed up to the website. We can afford to live and we can afford to reinvest in the business. Don was live on Bloomberg TV the other day, scratching his nose, explaining the concept. We're in the FT, we're in the Evening Standard. People like the concept, it resonates. We're only at the beginning of our journey, and it feels kind of funny standing up here telling you about it, but I guess it's valuable to hear from someone at this stage in any case. We're moving to New York next month, or in 3 weeks' time, to do what we do here over there, and we're having a lot of fun doing it. So rule number 2, that was the brief kind of life history of Escape the City. Rule number 2, do it for love and do it for freedom. Sound like a hippie, but those are the 2 reasons why we are doing what we're doing. So if you're sitting there and thinking, why should I start a business? Should I start a business? Our 2 motivations were, the first was freedom. We've already talked about wanting to escape, wanting to live a life on our own terms. We work way harder now than we ever did before, but we control what we work on. A lot of it's not glamorous, but at least we call the shots. And for me, that was the reason why we do it. And the second one was love, because if you're going to work 70 hours a week, you might as well love what you're doing. Life's really short, and work fills up a massive chunk of that. You might as well love what you're doing. And building a business isn't that glamorous. You do a lot of rubbish work. So to put up with all the stuff that you go through in order to get something off the ground, you need to have some of that fire in your belly. So love and freedom. The third rule, made-up rule for how to start a business with no money and no experience, is define success. So my first reaction to being asked to stand up here in front of you guys and talk before or after Simon, who founded Yo Sushi, was, oh God, you know, who are we? And then it made me think about, well, what is success? Why are we doing this? We're still doing it 2 years after starting it, so we must be doing something right. And I realized that, well, we're going to move to New York. We're going to run our business out there. OK, we haven't made it in terms of what we think we can build further down the line, but here we are doing it. I love what I do, and I actually get to do it on my own terms. So building a business is a real roller coaster, and you don't realize how much of it is a personal roller coaster as well as just a kind of professional, you've got to work your guts off. But reflecting on that and how we define success actually made me feel quite happy about where we've got to. So if you're going to start something, work out where you want to be 1 year down the line, 2 years down the line. The thing is, the more you achieve and the more you get to keep doing what you're doing, the greater your aspirations become, so you kind of never feel satisfied. But every now and then you have to take stock and go, actually, this is going to plan, we're doing okay here. The fourth one is have fun. So it's really not glamorous most of the time. If someone was to define my job over the last year, my job title would be Job Board Administrator. And Dom's would be Pixel Monkey or something like that. We started a job board from scratch, right? The premise being that lots of talented corporate professionals would want to spend time on the site and be attracted by the unconventional, exciting entrepreneurial opportunities that we hosted. But when we started, we had neither of those 2 things. So basically, we had to build a job board from scratch, which involved hunting the internet for exciting opportunities, putting them on our site, and attracting the people we wanted to spend on our time on our site to those opportunities. I mean, we faked it. And People spend a lot of time on the site. They found great opportunities. They applied for roles, got jobs, and said, you guys are doing a great job. But that was really grafty, hustly work. And A, if I didn't have Dom, and B, if we didn't have as much fun as we do building our business, it would have been really tough to put up with that kind of, that kind of unglamorous work. So have fun. Some of the examples of the ridiculous things we've done over the last couple of years. Well, one thing that springs to mind is the fact that our phone number, if you ring us up to ask to buy a job listing, is also the Red Cross's old phone number. So when you start a business, they say in the early days you'll be so excited to get an email that you'll respond to junk mail. And weeks would go by and no one would ring the phone. Actually, first it's because we had the wrong number on the website. And then grannies would ring up saying, I'd like a wheelchair. Hello, Escape the City, Rob speaking. And ridiculous conversations. I almost went for tea with one of them because I felt. And then, so I tell you about how we faked the job board until companies actually wanted to spend money on it. I was going to say, oh, rate card. So the phone eventually rings and it's not someone looking for a wheelchair from the Red Cross. And it's the Metropolitan Police, and they want a couple of analysts. They say, we want management consultants. We want them to come and work in the in the public sector. What's your rate card? And I'm like, oh, what's a rate card? I'm going to Google that. I said, what are rates? OK, £200 for a job listing. I think I emailed you 200, and it was a typo, and it was 300, so that's what stuck. And like all these ridiculous things that have happened, and we have to laugh, otherwise we'd cry about it. The other day, I was Mikey, who's now our US partner. These guys who left Lehman Brothers and started a shop in Soho where fish bite all the dry skin off your feet. They're escape heroes, so they said, come and interview us. We said, OK. So I found myself at lunchtime in Soho with my feet in a tank of fish, and I'm really ticklish. And I'm trying not to freak out while basically faking the interview, because basically the interviews always happen online anyway. We thought we'd go along for a free fish treatment. And so all these ridiculous things that have happened to us have made it worthwhile, because actually starting a business is hard work. It's not as glamorous as you think, or maybe you don't think it is, but I thought it would be more glamorous. Anyway, you've got to have fun. I'm probably running on a little bit, but the final one is, the fifth rule is make meaning. So I talked at the beginning about solving a problem. Businesses that have proper demand to solve a problem for someone. Once you've figured out what problem you want to solve, there's no guarantee that you're going to solve it in an effective manner. So execution is a massive amount of a business. Our idea is quite an exciting one. I remember when we dreamt it up in our lunch breaks at Ernst & Young, we thought, wow, this is amazing. But that was 1% of whether or not we were going to make it or not. There's a lot of noise out there, and starting a business with no money when you can't spend on advertising or the rest of it, you need to build a business that is worth sharing, worth people telling each other about. And why I say make meaning is because people don't care about another company selling widgets or another company importing Turkish carpets and selling them in London. How are you going to spread the word about what you're starting? Tell a story, tell a credible story. A great example is Socks for Happy People. They just sell socks. They have over 100,000 Twitter followers, and their philosophy is socks will make you happy. You put on a clean pair of colourful socks. And I love it, and I tell people about it. I've never bought socks from them, but the point is, okay, I've never bought socks from them, but the point is their concept is word of mouth friendly. Everyone knows Innocent's story, whereby they were at that food fair and they had the two bins. Should we quit our day jobs, yes or no? And at the end of the day, the yes bin was overflowing. What's another example? Tom's Shoes, where for every pair of shoes you buy, they donate a pair of shoes to a kid in Africa. That's the kind of thing I will tell my friends about. And that's the kind of business that we wanted to build, something that's worth sharing. So we always said, if Escape the City is the kind of business that someone will sit in the pub in the evening and tell their mate about, we're onto a winner, because that's the only way this thing's going to get spread around. And the fortunate thing is a lot of people who work in the city spend a lot of time in the pub bitching about their jobs. And I think that we feature in a lot of those conversations. So that would be my final one, is build a business that has a point of view, that draws a line in the sand. 37 Signals is a project management-based software in the States. Really boring stuff, but they wrote a book called Rework, and they have a blog which over 500,000 people read, because they believe in design, technology, and entrepreneurship, and blog about it in a way that's interesting to other people. So as a result, they have this cult following. They're not just project management software. And I think it's really interesting in terms of how ideas spread. So if you're thinking about starting something, make it remarkable, because people will talk about it. I should conclude now by saying building a business is really, really fun. It's an absolute privilege. It is a challenge, and it shapes you as a person in a way that I think doing lots of Excel and PowerPoint as a management consultant wasn't shaping me. It's not easy, but it's a lot of fun. And you don't have to risk it all. You don't have to quit your job in order to start something. There are ways to mitigate your risk. Start something on the side. Just take the first small step. Start a blog in the evenings. Just talk to someone who's done it and test your ideas and get the ball rolling, because it's amazing how hard it is to take the first initial step. And when Dom sent me the Escape the City logo, I already felt like the whole thing existed and we were kind of moving already. So my parting shot would be, if you've got that niggle inside yourself to start something, do it, because you'll win, because hopefully you'll get love and freedom like us. And we win because we don't have to hear you complain about your job anymore. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Rob. There you go, the head of the resistance. And the next speaker is a successful escapee. I actually first read about her on the Escape the City site. She managed a portfolio at Merrill Lynch, and now she is, I don't know if someone over there is actually feeding themselves with what she's made, but it's, she's founded a gluten-free cake company. And if you want to sample it, they're lying all around the room. And she did it, I think, most memorably for me, because she didn't like how all the gluten-free products on the market at the time were packaged as hippie shit. So she doesn't have everything in common with Rob.
Or your shirt.
Yeah. So I'll pass over to Sarah Hillary from Be Tempted.
Hi, I'm going to use this because I don't really have a very strong voice, so hopefully you'll be able to hear me. So has everybody tried a cake tonight? Yes? You all like them? Okay. Now, they're all my recipes, and when I left the city, even before I had thought about starting my own business, I didn't know how to bake at all. So it was, as Rob was saying earlier, you sort of need to have an idea which is something that you're interested in. I'm a little bit nervous. I'm really sorry about this. Okay, so I wrote something. So my idea was really small, and it was to take gluten-free cakes, because cakes are something that everybody loves. I was diagnosed with gluten intolerance in 2008 when I was working in Merrill Lynch. Didn't really like the job very much, and I used to go to Borough Market every Saturday. I used to love going and getting all these breads and cakes and taking them home. I used to be a foodie. All of a sudden, I couldn't eat that anymore. So I was really disappointed. I used to manage money for people who had made it themselves. So for some entrepreneurs who, one of them was, actually I can't say their name, sorry. Anyway, I'll tell you another story. So I was at BlackRock when Money Supermarket floated, and I was sitting there opposite this guy who had started this website, and he was IPOing it for so much money, and I was sitting opposite him, and I was thinking, how did he, 10 years ago, he just had this little idea, and all of a sudden he's IPOing it for so much money. This is something that I want to do. This is something that really excites me. If I can get my little idea and take it to market, have people enjoy my cakes, and then sell out in 3 years' time, I'll be really happy. So that's exactly what I did. Taught myself how to bake, and the rest sort of flowed. I didn't have much experience at all. I didn't know how to run a business, and I was doing it myself. So I think in those situations, if you're thinking about doing something yourself, and if you don't have experience, to be honest, I would think twice about it. You know, get somebody on board, somebody who you really trust, somebody that you can really work with, and somebody who shares your passion, somebody who also might have skills in areas that you don't. So for me, I could bake. I taught myself how to bake, but I was really bad at it. So within 3 months of coming up with all these recipes, I'd employed a full-time chef who had actually trained at the Fat Duck, or he'd worked there for 3 months. You can't actually say that he trained there if he'd worked there for less than 3 years. So sorry about that. Okay, so I started my business from my kitchen. Now, how does somebody take a business which is home-based into markets, into supermarkets? You know, there are so many stories about how people take things to market, and my main ethos is that I don't follow the rules, and I don't think anybody really should. I actually walked into Whole Foods Market on High Street, Kensington, with some cupcakes, and they weren't actually meant for Whole Foods. I just wanted to go in there and find out who the food buyer was to see if they'd be interested at some point in the future. The person that I spoke to said, oh, okay, yeah, I'll just make a phone call. Then they came back and said, he's coming right down. I was like, oh, shit. Had a chat to him, and I was like, he's like, yeah, you know, we're really looking for a really good gluten-free cake supplier. So, you know, bring us some samples. I was like, well, you know, actually, I've got some cupcakes here. They're not actually meant for you. They're meant for a friend of mine who works at Harrods. But if you want to try one, you know, you can. And he did. And he took one bite, and then he looked at me and said, Sarah, come upstairs. And I went, okay. So, yeah, well, okay, in a business sense. So anyway, I went upstairs into their office, and within an hour, I was talking to the regional vice president of Whole Foods Market. Oh God. So I was talking to the regional vice president of Whole Foods Market, who absolutely loved the cakes, and he said, you know, we really want to launch you. We love your story. The fact that you've left your city job, you don't have much experience even though you don't have much experience in cakes or, you know, running your own business, we really buy into you. And I think that's really important. If somebody buys into your story, then they're more likely to, you know, to do business with you. So within 1 month, I'd actually come up with 10 different product lines that I wanted to launch into Whole Foods Market. And I was just like, oh, shit, they want 3 deliveries a week. Average delivery was 350 pounds that they wanted, which is quite a lot of cakes. So if you think each bag of those cakes that are out there, the retail price is about £2.50, £3. So I'd sell them for £1.50 or thereabouts. So that's a lot of cakes that you have to make, and it was just me, so I was really, really stressing it. So I actually employed somebody very shortly after. I rented a kitchen space in the basement of a deli in Parsons Green. I made an arrangement with them. I was really resourceful, and I think that's what you have to do. Just, you know, I didn't have much money, right? I didn't have much money at all. So I ended up making a deal with this delicatessen and saying, you know, if I can rent some kitchen space from you, I will do it in a way where I won't actually pay you, but I'll make cakes for you instead. And they said yes. So, you know, I had a commercial kitchen, and I was there for about 3 months. They weren't charging me any rent, which was great. And then Harrods knocked on the door. They tried my cakes. They loved them. Oh, okay. So I ended up trying to raise some funds and getting myself into a commercial kitchen. And I mean, I opened a commercial kitchen in May of last year. It's a lot of hard work. You know, it costs about £20,000 to £30,000 to open, to invest and buy lots of equipment, the equipment that I wanted. I mean, you can do it on a budget, of course, which is what I did. But I bought a couple of expensive things like ovens and stuff, which which are somewhat necessary if you want to have good ones. Okay, what else was I going to talk about? Okay, so I got the products into Whole Foods, got them into Harrods, and then I did a food show last year. I got them into Fortnum and Mason. So there's quite a lot of demand for gluten-free cakes. What I also want to say is that business is a journey. I'm a completely different person now than I was 3 years ago when I made the decision to jump ship. When I was working in the city, I was a very competitive person. And I think that a lot of people are, and I'm assuming that a lot of you actually might work in the city, maybe? Okay, right. Well, where I worked, everybody was quite competitive. And I was really in it for the money. I wasn't so concerned about gluten-free cakes, to be honest. What I really wanted to do was, I just wanted a business opportunity, and I really wanted to make money and sell out within 3 years' time. That's actually changed. I actually really do like what I do. I might have a conversation with myself every month and just remind myself why I'm doing this. Every time somebody eats one of my cakes, they absolutely love them, and it makes you happy. It makes me happy anyway. Started the business, into Whole Foods, into Harrods, into Fortnum's. Right, scalability is very important. Do you have the people in place to scale up your little idea and make it into a big business? Are your profits, are you profitable? Are your margins there? Are they there to enable scalability? When I first started, I wasn't so concerned about the profit. I was concerned about the sales and making sure that everybody, as many people as possible were eating my products, and they were. But there was a cost. I wasn't looking at the amount that I was paying in courier fees and distribution. So even though I was making a small profit, it wasn't actually that great. What I've recently done is I've actually closed my commercial kitchen, and I've outsourced the production of my cakes. So I found a company, they ended up buying my commercial kitchen. They bought all of the assets inside. They took on the employment of one of my chefs to ensure consistency of the gluten-free products, because there's a lot of issues with cross-contamination. So they spent some money, and to get some sales from me. And the idea there is that they're going to make it into, there's all these regulations like BRC if you want to get into Waitrose or Ocado and so forth. So that's the reason that I ended up selling the manufacturing side, because you need to make a compromise at some point. In my case, I love running the business, but my skills are in sales and marketing. So I needed to step away from the manufacturing side. And just with that simple step, it meant that I can scale up. And we are in talks with some supermarkets at the moment to sell little cakes there. Effectively business is a system. So as long as you can get a system in place, you'll be able to roll it out. And you need a contingency plan. So, I started the business myself. There was nobody else there who could do the management if I wasn't there. And the reason I'm saying this is because I have first-hand experience. In February, I had a big accident. I actually fell off a wall. It wasn't drunken. I was sitting in my garden, and it was a 2-meter high wall, and I fell backwards off it, and I broke my fall by sticking my arm out. I ended up breaking it. I was off work for a long time. That was a pretty bad break. I ended up needing major surgery on it, but it's fine. Don't know if you can tell, but it's fine now. But for about 3 months there was nobody who could do the management. So you really need to have somebody that you can trust to run the business if you're not able to. So you can't do everything yourself. You need to learn to delegate and accept people will make mistakes just like you will. What I recommend is that you also join a support network of like-minded individuals. So join things like Escape the City, join things like Virgin Media Pioneers and so forth. Have a good support system in place, because you will need support. And you need to plan to keep planning and evolving, because external factors such as competition are always in place, and you can't really control what others will do. Competition will occur, it's natural, Somebody told me this once, and I've kept it with me. Don't worry when they copy you, worry when they stop copying you. Which I think is, it's great, because I've got a number of competitors who are copying me at the moment. So I take that as a compliment. I don't really have much else to say, but I just think that you should use your contacts and use your resources. If you are working in the city at the moment, you probably have access to things such as, you know, Bloomberg, you have access to research notes. Find out what the average profit margins are in the industry that you want to go into. Make contacts with lawyers, perhaps you're a lawyer yourself, or accountants who can help you when the going gets tough, because you will need advisors and so forth. And the last thing I want to say is that recently I was, there's this award thing, it's called the Smarter 100, and they name 100 of the most exciting, disruptive, resourceful businesses in the UK. They announced this last week, and I was lucky enough to be in there. So the winner is actually decided by public vote. So what I would absolutely love if you could do is log onto the Smarter website, www.smarter.com, and it's smarter with an A.com, /smarter100. Vote for me. The grand prize is £10,000 cash, and I'd absolutely love it, because that means that I can take a holiday, which I haven't had for 2 years. So please vote, please vote. Honestly, I'd love it if you can, and enjoy the cakes and enjoy the rest of the night. Thank you.
So our third and last speaker probably doesn't need too much introduction. He founded Yo Sushi, and since then he's also gone on to develop his whole brand of Yo. I'm sure he'll tell you all about that. He answers his email in maximum 2 words. So I got, or a figure. I got 7. It was when he was going to arrive today. Hopefully he's not going to be quite so laconic. So without further ado, Simon Woodroffe, founder of Yo.
Thank you. So, my question to you all is why are you here? And what's going on? You know, because I know that I spent quite a lot of my life when I wanted to make change, sitting in rooms like this and listening to people like this and thinking some pretty complicated thoughts. So I guess we're all kind of the same, and the same thing's going on for you. So in spite of that front you put on to the world as you go out and have a drink, actually there's another level that's going on, which is going, what am I doing with my life and where am I going, and could I do that, or what can I steal from that and that and that and that? And it often occurs to me that, you know, I'm looking at all of your faces here, and that if what goes on behind every one of your faces is what goes on inside me, then we're dealing with a very, very complicated world. Because I know that in here, and it's been around for a few years now, there's a whole lot of stuff that goes on. It's a whole world in here. It's a neighborhood. You wouldn't want to go there alone. So then the question is, why, if you had money coming into your life and a lovely family and some nice friends and a partner of some sort, why would you want to go out and start a business? And, you know, step outside your comfort zone and do all of those things. And I think that the why, that's actually what happens here. Yes, you might get some business tips, but business is pretty easy, actually. It's pretty common sense. Felix Dennis was a publisher. I remember Felix says he wrote a book called How to Be Rich, and he wrote a poem which went, if I can remember it, it went, "Ideas, we've had 'em since Eve first met Adam, but take it from me, execution's the key. Good fortune, the truth is the harder you work, the more that you sweat, the luckier you get. The money, go find a likely investor. To get what you need, you toadies to greed. The talent, go find it, but first wine and dine it. It's tedious work with a talented jerk. To win it, you have to be in it, but never be late to quit and cut bait. Expansion is vanity. Profit is sanity. Overhead begs and it walks on two legs. The first step, just do it and bluff your way through it. Remember to duck, Godspeed and good luck." So it's kind of easy. That's business. The hard bit for me has always been, and to this day, is what happens in here. And it's knowing where I'm going. Because when I'm absolutely clear, when I know that I'm standing here, and that I know who I am, and that I know I'm trying to get there, and I know exactly where I'm going, it's very easy. Because I don't get distracted, I just want to get from here to here. But when I don't, and I call it being in the groove, when you're in the groove, when you can find something that you become so completely and utterly obsessed with, or you love so much, not that you're doing it for rational, process-driven reasons. Those things have to happen, like in Felix Dennis's poem, and those come later. But at the beginning, so that when you are completely obsessed, like you were when you were at school and you were obsessed with something you just found out, then you're in that groove. Goethe, that German philosopher, and this amazes me, this was nearly 300 years ago in an old sort of pre-Victorian age with a big old overcoat and a big austere face and a beard. Goethe said all that time ago, he said, when you know where you're going, and he said, when you're truly committed, he said, the world conspires to help and support you in all sorts of ways that you could never have believed possible, including the provision of financial assistance. And I love that last bit. You know. It's comforted me on many a night. But there has to be something, and I suspect that in every single one of you, of us, there is something that if we do go out and do something that drives us. And it probably comes from way back. And I know that when I was growing up, well, the seeds were sown back there. And I know that when I was growing up, it always seemed to me, and this is a memory I didn't realize I had until much later, it always seemed to me that everybody around us in our family, they were kind of better off than us. And it sounds pretty kind of flippant and light, and I wanted to be one of them. And we were kind of scrimping and saving, and I wanted to be one of them, and I think that went very deep inside me. And, you know, I felt inadequate is probably the truth, and so I became a bit of a show-off. And, you know, I wanted to compensate that. And I remember at the age of probably 15, 16, I remember telling people, this was back in the 60s, I remember telling people, early 60s, I remember telling people that I was going to be a millionaire by the time I was 20. And then I got to 20, and it was the end of the 60s, and, you know, we were doing peace signs and, you know, all the things we did in those days. And I remember thinking to myself, well, I think I'll put it off till I'm 30. I was having a good time. And then I remember going through the drama of my 30s. And I think people grow up younger now, but I went through the drama of my 30s, and I had my first work and my first job. And the 30s, I've got to tell you, it may be reassuring to some, but the 30s is the hardest decade of the lot. For me, it was the hardest decade. It was the decade when I first started having a proper relationship, and I first, you know, maybe having children, or maybe you got your first business going, or whatever it is, and suddenly there's a drama, and you're busy on the phone, and everything's going on, and you know, you go through the drama. I'm sorry, I can't talk now. I'm too busy. And you go through your drama of your 30s, and I went through the drama of my 30s. Believe me, it was a drama. And I remember getting to 40 and suddenly realizing and remembering this little 15-year-old boy who'd had this dream. And I remember it was a sort of tear your hair out moment. And I remember thinking to myself, my God, I've completely forgotten to become a millionaire. But my point is that it was a call to action. It was time was going to run out. There has to be a call to action. I feel very sorry for people who are perhaps born with too much, you know, who can't find a way to step out of their comfort circle, comfort zone. I always like that comfort zone. You know, remember that comfort zone word? And I remember when I was starting things up, I remember somebody talking about the comfort zone. And today what that means to me is that I knew when I was in well into my 40s by then, and I was thinking about what I was going to do, and I was a lot of things, and somebody said to me, you're in a comfort zone. And they were right, because I could earn a living, just earn a living. It wasn't that great, and I felt like I was really underachieved, and you know, other people were going off, and I was sort of, you know, which, as you can imagine, for a bit of a show-off, it wasn't a very good place to be. You know, and I remember thinking, having this image of sort of almost of being on the sand and taking a stick and drawing a circle around myself, and I was inside this sort of metaphoric comfort zone where I could survive, but it wasn't that great. And I remember that image of stepping outside the comfort zone. And what do you feel when you're outside your comfort zone? You feel scared. Fear. Pretty fundamental. If you really take all human emotions, they come down to a very few number of things, and fear is probably a pretty predominant one that is in most of us and sort of lurks around there all the time. Very useful, like anger, can drive you to get things done. And I know the normal sort of human predicament is that when you step outside your comfort zone, you feel uncomfortable. And most of us, when we feel uncomfortable, what do? We want to get back inside the comfort zone where it's comfortable. But I know today that if you stay outside your comfort zone for a reasonable period of time, feeling uncomfortable is a very, very good place to be. You know, because what actually happens is like the pebble dropped into the lake, the ripples go out and the comfort zone gets bigger and bigger because you get used to that feeling. It's only a feeling after all. You get used to that and it becomes normal. And your comfort zone expands. And I left school with 2 O-levels. So I was always a freelance at some level or other, and I was in the music business and the concert business and the designed stage sets for rock shows. I remember getting to 1985, which was the first sort of milestone of thing, and it was Live Aid, and we did the design sort of thing for Live Aid. And I remember suddenly looking around me in this business that had grown up, the touring concert business, you know, the big stadiums and everything, and suddenly looking around, because I was an amateur, I just, you know, had ideas and managed to sell them to people. And I remember looking around and thinking to myself, I've got to get out of this business before I get found out. I'm sure is a thought that none of you have ever had, but that's what it felt like at that time, you know. And I went on, and that was the time when I started thinking, I've got to do something, and I've got, you know, I'm going to run out of time. And I was in a restaurant in the West End of London, and my dad had always said, go and ask people's advice. He was a really big one for asking people's advice. And I don't know about you, but I still try and ask people's advice. It's a very hard thing to ask somebody's advice because. For me, it is anyway, because usually I want to tell them what the advice is. And it's a very, very hard thing, worth practicing actually. See if you can go and ask somebody really their advice and really hear it without judging what they say. I always had that image of, you know, let somebody give you the real advice. Some of it may be complete rubbish. It can go and be filed in the waste bin. Some of it you could save for later, and some of it may be absolutely pertinent. But to be open enough to really hear what people are. What I always say about business ideas is don't ever ask anybody, should I do it? Because they don't know. Only you know. But definitely take all that advice in and really hear people. And it's the confident guy who just sits there and nods and listens and hears it. And I started asking people's advice about what I thought I'd be good at and what I thought I'd be bad at. And I was going to do all sorts of things. And I was sitting in a restaurant in the West End of London with a guy I knew from the TV business, a guy by the name of Mr. Uehara-san. He was a Japanese TV producer, which I knew from the TV business. In fact, he was the producer of Japanese Top of the Pops in those days, which in Japan was called Hit Studio Deluxe. Not a lot of people know that. And we were sitting there having lunch, and he said, and I said, what about sushi? And I'd always, I was obsessed with sushi. I'd lived in LA quite a bit, and I used to, it's like some drugs for me, And, to some people is what I meant in those days. And I was sitting, and I said, what about sushi? Nobody's really done sushi over here. And there was this oriental silence. And he looked up at me out of this oriental silence. And he looked at me in the eyes, and he said, what you should do, Simon, is a conveyor belt sushi bar with girls in black PVC miniskirts. And it was like, and it was before the internet. There was nowhere to research it. And I remember getting on the phone, and I was calling the trade and calling Japan. You can imagine the calls I had. And within a few weeks, I remember getting these things through the post. Pre-internet, researching was very hard in those days. And I remember one day, started to open these sort of Japanesey envelopes tied up with bits of string, and katakana writing. Really exciting to get them. And I opened one day, and all the others had been in Japanese. And you could just look at the pictures. And I discovered that there were 2,500 of these conveyor belt sushi bars, and they'd been in Japan since the 1960s, and nobody had ever heard about them. And I opened this one day, and it was in English. And at top, it said, how to start your own conveyor belt sushi bar. And it told you everything about how to do it. I remember sort of holding it like this and thinking about, I hope nobody else has seen this, quick, action. And when that euphoria had died down, I have that little voice in my head that goes, it'll never happen, it'll all go wrong, And that's what I'm talking about, is the bit that stops you doing things, And I worked out this thing over the years that I call acting as if. So instead of saying I'm going to start the world's largest chain of Japanese conveyor belt sushi bars, that's going to be the rock on which I build a brand called Yo that will then go into Yo-tels and Yo spas and Yo zones, and will be the new Richard Branson and the new Easy, to which my brain goes, no way, Jose. You can't even get the washing up done in the morning. I say, all I'm going to do is be an actor, and I'm going to act as if I am somebody who would do that. And I remember I had this thing that, I remember giving myself, instead of sort of saying, shall I, shan't I, shall I, shan't I, shall I, shan't I thought, well, actually, there's no reason why I can't start immediately. Just get a notebook and start working on it, keep the day job, keep going on. And I can't remember where I was going with it. Anyway, what was I talking about? Where was I going? What was I talking about? Oh, yeah, acting as if, that's right. Acting as if, yeah. And and actually, I set myself 3 months. So instead of saying I'm going to do it, so I'm not going to go, I said I set myself 3 months. So 3 months is quite an interesting period of time. 3 months is nearly 100 days. I know that when that mountain in front of me feels overwhelming, if I knock off just a 1% improvement today, at the end of 3 months, I have a 100% improvement. At the end of that 3 months, I knew a lot about Japanese conveyor belt sushi bar. Obsessed, I was saying I was. And I started waking up in the morning, and that negative voice was gone. The barrier. And I had another voice that was waking me up. And this voice is going, you are going to be very, very rich. And very, very famous. And very, very successful. And fortunately, I've been around long enough in this old world to know that this voice is just as big a delusion as this one. But this one kind of feels pretty good, It gets you jumping out of bed in the morning, and you walk into a room, and it's such a weird thing, confidence, isn't it? I mean, there have been times in my life I've been very, very unconfident. But when you get that groove, you act as if, you do it, you get to a place. And I walk into the room, and I say, whatever it is, I want to sell raw fish off conveyor belts with robots serving drinks. And cynical as you may be, all four of you, there's a bit of you, if I say it like that, you kind of think he could be right. Because the truth is that none of us really know, and we don't want to be the one that missed out. And I opened that restaurant, actually 2 years later. I was going to open it at the end of year one, and I was very lucky because my deal fell through at the end of year one. The rug was pulled right from underneath me because I lost the property deal at Poland Street in Soho. And we actually opened that restaurant in another year on. And actually, it was in the second year that all the things happened that made Yo Sushi successful. You know, we had the automatic call buttons that you pressed, and you know, we had the conveyor belt obviously going around. The beer tap, that's right. We had the self-serve beer taps. We had the self-serve water. We had all of those things going on.
Why didn't I know about your restaurant then?
Say?
Why didn't I know about your restaurant then, the self-service beer taps?
Well, that was actually in Yo Below, wasn't it? You must have been to Yo Below, you naughty girl. Yo Below was a bar we did. So talk about focus. You know, you always want to, expansion is vanity, profit is sanity. So we got 5 restaurants up and running, and they're doing pretty well. And so I think I'm going to open bars. So I opened 3 bars, you know, which talk about taking your eye off the ball. But you know, I mean, it was such fun. We had low Japanese seating. We had the self-serve beer. Then it was about the time that the smoking debate was going on, and we had smoke extracting ashtrays. So you could smoke. There's people still smoking in those days, unbelievably, when you look back. And we had these hoovers that sucked the smoke away, and the smoke all went in. And then there was a debate about legalizing marijuana. And I told the Times, I said, well, look, when they do actually legalize it, we're going to suck all the smoke into a special room and charge people to go in there and call it Yo to Blow. And you know, it's a funny thing because, of course, it did take our eye off the ball, and they never made any money, the bars, but here's somebody who remembers them, and they created this image. Oh, yes, they're in lots of things. You know, actually, all I've ever done is, you know, we've had a successful chain of restaurants, there's 80 of them now, and growing, and a successful, now we've opened in New York, a successful small chain of hotels. That's all I've done. All the rest is kerfuffle. You know, and I can kind of admit it now, but at the time it was, no, we've got this and that, and you know, and so they're all added to the thing. But we opened, yeah, and then I was telling you about Yo Sushi, and we had, I thought we could do the drinks a different way. So, and then I thought robots, you know, and I don't know if you've ever been out to, I thought robotic drinks trolley. I don't know if you've been out to try and buy a robotic drinks trolley, but they don't sell them in John Lewis anyway. And I remember trying to get them cheap, you know, get it cheap, you know, that one. And I remember somebody said you should get the engineering department of a major university to help you. So I thought, well, why not? You know, I don't know even what goes on there. So I started phoning them up, and I eventually got through to Edinburgh University. And this voice, somebody gave me the number, and the voice at the end of the line, she said, Edinburgh University, robots department, how can I help you today, sir? And I actually married, I like using non-conventional suppliers, so the people who'd built a lot of the big stage set, the Rolling Stones Bridge and U2 and all these things, they did the conveyor belts actually for us, but they also built this robotic drinks trolley. And about, you know, 4 weeks before we opened that first restaurant in Poland Street in Soho on a building site, they carried, brilliant stages they were called, they carried this robotic drinks trolley in, and they put it in front of the restaurant. We watched it drive very, very smoothly, sort of turn of its own accord and drive down the aisle. And you know, my fear level went down. I thought people are going to come in and see this. Food's still got to be great, 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 great. The product's got to be great, but people hear about it. It's what you were talking about, you know, word of mouth, you know, greatest advertising of all. And this went around the corner, and as it went around the corner, it spoke, because part of my specification was each one would speak in speaking character, and as this one went around the corner, it said, move your fat ass. It said, somebody's got a fucking job to do in this restaurant. And I remember opening, and this American tourist sort of standing there, he said, John, did you hear what he said to me? Oh, it's a robot. You know, I realized you can actually do or say anything in this world, so long as you can take the context to make it different. And we opened that restaurant, and with it, you know, it was the first week it was empty. And the second week we had a queue down the block. It was the most amazing, amazing feeling, and of relief. And then, of course, the paranoia and terror starts to build up again as you think, I've got to keep that going, and what's the next? And every time you open another one, it's a threat. And we actually did open the second and the third. And the fourth one didn't do so well, and the fifth one was a disaster. So suddenly we're hemorrhaging, and the sixth one. You know, at the beginning, the money had been rolling in. And I actually handed over to a guy who became my partner, who runs Yo Sushi today, Robin Rowland. And I handed it over to him, and he really knew the process. You talked about systems, and you're absolutely right. You know, we always say, Robin and I say, the two most difficult things we ever did was one, I opened it, and two, he took it from being 5 restaurants where I knew the staff, every one of their name and their family history and their salary. And you know, turning it from that into a systemized thing. And along the way, a lot of things can fall over. And I did actually, at the end of year 5, I sold my majority and controlling stake in that business. And I did what we all dream of doing that I never believed would happen. You know, venture capitalists and Robin had believed it because he'd been in that place before. You know, he'd been at Whitbread, he was a corporate, you know, he believed that that's how it worked, but I never believed that I'd, you know, and we had a lot of threats as well, which I didn't tell them at the time. And so much that I didn't believe it, but when I turned up to the closing meeting in the city and so there's 40 lawyers in a room and there's all this stuff and all the lawyers suddenly started being nice on the last day. And we had a drink and they said, where do you want the money? And you know, you know probably some of you, but when you do a closing meeting like that, they actually take the money and they wire it straight to you. And I hadn't arranged for anywhere to put the money because I hadn't really believed it was going to happen. So I sort of got out my checkbook and gave them the sort code and said, you know, there you go. And I remember leaving that meeting and walking down Oxford Street where I lived in those days and realizing that this money from the sale of 75% of Yo Sushi would be in my bank account. And since I'd given them the current account number, presumably it would be in the PIN machine. So I thought I'd better have a look. And so I did go and stand in the queue and I got to the PIN machine and I put my PIN number in and there on the screen was the number. And I can tell you honestly that if anybody tells you that money doesn't make you happy, they're lying. And I did, I'll tell the story against myself, but by this time there was a sort of queue behind me. And there was a bloke sort of coughing and tutting behind me. And I did turn around to him. I said, listen, mate. I said, cop a look at that. I can truly tell you that life, you know, what are we doing here on this earth? What's it all about? You know, the mystery. But I'd never ever met the person who went out to do what they dreamed of doing. Had the courage to go out and do what they dreamed of doing. I never met the person who regretted it, regardless of whether they later succeeded or failed. But I met many, many people, especially they'd come up and tell me this, who later in their life looked back and said, I wish I'd taken those chances when they were there. Because they do come across all of us, the chances. It's just they pop their head up and we go, no, no, risk averse or whatever. I never met the person. In Japan, they don't have a word for good luck, but they have a word for their equivalent expression for good luck is keep going. So that's what I say to all of you is keep going. Thank you very much.